Welcome to the Heal Podcast. I'm Kelly Noonan-Gores, and every week I speak to the leading doctors, healers, spiritual teachers, and scientists to find out what is truly possible when it comes to healing. I also interview real people with extraordinary healing stories. My philosophy is, what's possible for one is possible for all. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Heal Podcast. Today's conversation is a powerful one. It's about healing the planet, healing our soil, healing our degenerative societal systems, which will result in healing our bodies and minds. Talk about getting to the root cause. This conversation is about looking to our Indigenous past for a regenerative future. And I am honored to be sitting with Nathalie Kelley, an actress of Quechua descent and a lover of soil, fungi, and our beautiful world. As an actress, she most recently starred in the #1 Netflix series, The Baker and the Beauty, as well as the Fast and the Furious movie series. Nathalie has a background in policy and social science, and she strives to tell stories that educate and inspire people. She is on the boards of both Kiss the Ground and the Fungi Foundation, using her platform to elevate Indigenous wisdom and technologies as a means of coming back into justice and harmony with our ecosystems. She is in deep devotion and service to the entire web of life, advocating in particular for the health of our soil, water, the fungi, and the forests. Her mission is the preservation of biodiversity, including cultural and microdiversity on the planet. She is beautiful inside and out, and as you will learn, a warrior of sorts. Nathalie, welcome to the Heal Podcast.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here, and thank you for making the time and space for me, Kelly. I'm a big fan.
Oh, thank you. I am a huge fan of yours as well, and I listen to your background and everything that you've done and accomplished, and your passion is so palpable. And I just want to share, I would love you to share what turned you on to this mission that you're so deeply involved in, and I'm just in awe of how much you're able to accomplish.
Well, a few years ago, I watched the fantastic Fungi movie, like you and like a lot of other people probably listening to this podcast. And that was the movie that really opened my eyes to this incredible story of fungi. And I'm a sucker for like untold stories or like mysteries. And for me, that the kingdom or queendom of fungi is this underdog among all the other kingdoms, and its story has not really been told properly. And want to give gratitude here to Louis Schwartzberg, a former guest here on your podcast, for really doing such a credible service to the kingdom of fungi in bringing them to life in the way that he did through his amazing cinematography, through profiling the incredible mycologist Paul Stamets, and kind of inviting us into this mysterious and truly fantastic world. And so I was, the term we use is sporulated, completely sporulated by that movie. And it started to make me realize, like, wow, like I didn't realize I was such a fan of fungi, but I've actually received incredible healing through certain fungi like psilocybin. I appreciate the way that fungi has brought us so many of the foods and drinks that we enjoy today. I'm aware that fungi make such a huge part of like our inner makeup and our biology. And now I'm aware that there's this huge part of soil health, which was something that I started to get into a few years ago too. And so I reached out and I said, I love this story. Like, can I help you tell this story in any way? Do you need support? And I was lucky enough to be put in touch with Juliana Furci, who is the foundress of the Fungi Foundation. She founded it over 15 years ago in Chile. And an incredible, she's the Jane Goodall of fungi. She has been doing this work tirelessly and pretty much thanklessly for the last 15 years. And the movie just kind of catapulted her and the world of fungi into mainstream consciousness. And I was one of those people that, was like I said, sporulated. And she said, we've been waiting for people like you to come in and ask to help because we really need the storytellers. Because I said, here's the thing, I really want to help, but I don't know much about mycology. I'm not a scientist, but I can spin a story. And she said, that's exactly what we need, because the fungi, the Fantastic Fungi movie definitely opened everybody's eyes to this fantastic world, but there are more stories to tell, and a lot of them involve the fact that the fungi actually need our help. So there's all this talk around how fungi can heal us, but we live in a world where these healers need healing and need help. Fungi, as you know, are a kingdom just like plants and animals. And as Louis mentioned, there's, I think, 6 times more fungal species than even plants.
And it's the forgotten kingdom.
It's the forgotten kingdom.
We know flora and fauna. We've never been taught about fungi, and it's the oldest, and it's the biggest.
Exactly. And without it, our world wouldn't survive. There would be no plants and no animals. And so she woke me up to the fact that fungi is not only majorly underrepresented in the conservation world, even in terms of inclusivity of language. People always say flora and fauna, but where's the fungi? And that's part of what the Fungi Foundation's mission is to just start with the language. Like, let's even get included, just name it,
right.
you know? But then the fact that we are losing potentially thousands of species of fungi a day, and we only have documented 5 to 10%. 5 to 10% of all fungi are known to science. So if we are so blown away by the turkey tails and the chagas and the psilocybin and the penicillin and the LSD and all the wonderful things that we've gotten from that 5 to 10%, what's in that 90% that we are missing?
I have chills.
Yes, and so that story was like, ooh, I need to be a part of this story. This is a story that I feel really called to tell, because in that 90% could be the answers to so many of our problems, our health problems, our societal problems, maybe our energy problems even. Who knows what's in that 90% that's undiscovered. And what a beautiful way to give back to these organisms that have given so much to me and that truly exist on this planet to teach us about symbiosis and reciprocity. And so it really helped be the catalyst for this paradigm shift for me when in the way that I viewed healing, because up until then I was like, I need to heal myself, give me the chaga, give me the turkey tail. But at some point I had to acknowledge, like, okay, I've reached a level of healing now and I'm so grateful, and now what do I do with that healing if not give back and work to heal these and save these ecosystems that are the habitats for fungi that are being encroached on daily.
Totally. And after heal, everyone's like, what's your next, are you gonna make heal 2, and what I'm really have been called to do in the last few years is I've just always been fascinated with the macro micro, and to see planet Earth going through so much trauma right now and destruction and mistreatment and denaturing and this disconnect, and knowing that planet Earth is an organism that can heal and will heal itself if we get out of the way, same as the human body, learn to encourage the systems to work together and flourish and evolve, and then remove the offending items that are putting us into a disease state or the earth into a degenerative state. So I've kind of pivoted because I feel like we can heal the planet, or we can help heal the planet by stopping these destruction and degenerative practices and industries and mindsets. And then it will just regenerate itself. And as a byproduct of that, the human bodies will start to heal again, because we will it'll be reconnected to nature. We've completely denatured ourselves through our food, through the chemicals in our environment, through the chemicals we're putting in our body from our medical systems. So I just love, like the fungi, it's almost like the digestive system of the earth. Like, it breaks down the trees that fall in the forest, or that decomposes the animals' bodies, or composting, or it's for our soil nutrients, or it's with the mycelium. Mycelium. Thank you. It's like our neural network underneath it's just like it's such a micro macro of the human, how the human body is designed, and then earth and fungi are a huge part of that. I'm fascinated by
You're
that.
sporulated too.
I'm sporulated.
And so what I'm finding is that there are lots of us out here in the world who feel the same way, that perhaps we just weren't aware of this story, but once it lands on us, we realize that we need to be a part of this movement. Like Paul Stamets, who's also on the board of the Fungi Foundation, says this is the revolution from the mycelium underground. And there's something exciting happening when I talk to people about fungi. Again, big thanks to Louis' movie, where people's eyes light up now and they want to be a part of it. And so I'm really grateful for you to give me this opportunity to come on the podcast. And I know that there are going to be people listening who feel the same way as you and me. And so today I want to unpack a few of the ways that you can be a part of it. This is an invitation. Like, if the mycelial network is here to teach us anything, it's how to work in cooperation as a collective and get this done together.
Yes, exactly.
It's the opposite of individualism.
Exactly. And so the fungi, there might be some because it's been so removed from our language. And we often think of fungi in a kind of a negative context, where our food is molding, or things are rotting, or there's mold in our homes, and so there's like a negative connotation,
or a plague on our crops, things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's bad PR.
So exactly,
needs a PR campaign.
So, and what I'm learning too is I've just become exposed to, as I've pivoted my kind of passion and attention to the environment. Is just, how we've just destroyed the health of our soils. And you're a big soil advocate. And I've just become involved, in regenerative farming movement through the Farmer's Footprint. And I feel like soil is something that can reach people, and you talk about composting. It's something that we can do on an individual level. So just kind of give us just a background of why you are so passionate about soil, your experience in Australia.
Oh yeah.
And how we can kind of wake up to the fact that there are things we can do on the individual level. And if we collectively do it, and just change the health by 1% of the soil in the world, we can completely shift the trajectory of our environment.
Isn't that incredible? I asked Zach Bush the other night to confirm this fact with me, and that is, if we increase all the arable soil land of the world, all the farmable land, by less than 1% of organic matter, we can reduce greenhouse gases to pre-industrial levels. That is wild. And so, yeah, obviously the fungi play a big part of that. So I'll back up a little bit, because some people might be like, "What did you just say? Fast and Furious? Why is this actress who did a movie about cars talking about mushrooms?"
Yeah, and soil.
People might not know how I got to this pivot, and soil. So, yes. So I'm going to back up a little further than you asked me, to my ancestors, who are Quechua, who are the descendants of the Incas. So if anybody has ever appreciated the beauty of Machu Picchu, my ancestors built that.
Amazing.
And they were master agriculturalists, astronomers, architects, and engineers. And I say master because they didn't go to any fancy schools, but everything they did was built out of thousands of years of observation of their landscape and the natural world, and they knew how to work with nature and not fight against her. One amazing example that I love is one of the so-called mysteries around Machu Picchu is why did they build it there? Have you ever visited Machu Picchu?
I haven't, but pre-Columbian civilization was my favorite class in college. I'm obsessed with Mayans, Aztecs, Incas, Olmecs, the whole thing.
Side note, have you read 1491?
I have not.
Oh, it's the book on the history pre-Columbus. It's wonderful.
Okay, amazing.
So for everybody who's listening, highly recommended if you are interested in going beyond the 500 years of history they teach at schools here, and you want to know the 30,000 plus year of history of this continent and indigenous peoples. So they built Machu Picchu where it is, even though it's in this infamously hard to reach place in the middle of these perilous mountains in the middle of this wilderness. They built it there because that's where the fault line is. And if they're going to build a city out of stones, then why not let nature and her the natural tectonic movement of these plates break up these stones for you, so it's less work.
Wow.
It just makes so much
logic.
sense. We never think about that when we put in car parks and shopping malls and buildings. We never think in a logical way about if this is working with or against nature. And so when it came to farming, they were also brilliant farmers, and my ancestral land in Peru still has the terraces that the Incas built, and they're still being used for agriculture. Okay. And beyond just the Incas, like, you know, some of the indigenous people of the Amazon, not some of them, but the ancestors of all current indigenous people in the Amazon actually built the Amazon. It is a bioengineered, man-made, planted orchard.
Wow.
It is a food forest created by indigenous humans, based on, like I said, thousands of years of observation of the natural world. And this is where things get really exciting, because this goes to, you know, I heard you say, like, you know, nature knows how to heal itself, and if we just step out of the way, then it will like recover and replenish, and I fully agree. But and we can help it happen in a faster way if we move into our birthright, which is to be a keystone species in the ecosystem. And that is what indigenous people, especially in the Amazon, are here to teach us. Example. So the Amazonian soil is really like traditionally quite poor and full of clay and not conducive to a lot of productive agriculture or biodiversity. Can't really support a lot of humans. Okay. But somewhere in their studies of the soil levels, the stratas of soil, they discover that a few thousand years ago, it changes from this red clay soil to this black, thick, moist, juicy, nutrient-dense earth. And that they call terra preta, black earth. And that is a man-made invention or intervention.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
This is the true definition of regenerative. Humans intervening in an agricultural system and leaving more biodiversity and more topsoil than where they began.
Yes.
So it blows sustainability out of the water. We're talking like building better.
Actively. Yes.
So they did that, and out of that, out of this this discovery of terra preta, they were able to support civilizations of millions. And this was previously like unheard of and like unthinkable when it came to like the way historians and even just people in the conservation movement had viewed the Amazon as this like pristine wilderness where a few indigenous people still roamed nomadically. No, we were supporting civilizations in there. And the fact that there's very little trace of them now is testament to the fact that they left no trace because they were so circular.
Yeah.
They weren't leaving behind trash.
Right.
Everything that they built or ate or clothed themselves with was from the forest and has gone back into the forest. But one of the only silver lining with all the deforestation happening is now in certain places, like in Acre, which is a state of Brazil, you can fly over these cattle farms, which is deforested Amazon, and you can see the earthworks that they made. And now there's it's an archaeological hotspot in the world because people are descending on the Amazon to find out about these lost civilizations, because they offer us a new blueprint for how to be human, for who we're truly supposed to be. I mean, this is a time in human history where humans are building biodiversity and not destroying it. Mm-hmm. And the whole agricultural civilization story that we've been fed until now has been very Eurocentric, which is from the Romans to the Egyptians to the Greeks, Mesopotamians. All of these civilizations have come and gone, and they've fallen all because of the same root cause, which is soil erosion due to deforestation and bad agricultural practices that leads to more erosion and then desertification and then hunger and then causes all kinds of socio-political problems, okay? Mm-hmm. Our civilization is heading down that path now.
Yes.
So the fact that we are being offered a blueprint for a different way to live is so exciting because, and this is why I do this work to really elevate indigenous wisdom and cosmovisions and technologies, because they're offering us an alternative. No, here's a way that we can eat, live, clothe ourselves, build our clothes, have all of our needs provided for without owing nature an ecological debt, actually in reverse, leaving her in a better state than when we found her.
Exactly. And we are this keystone species, and we've, bravo, we have all this amazing technology that has made our lives convenient. But at the expense of, the health of our bodies, the health of our society. So it's like now is the time we have to wake up, take what's at our fingertips of like what this amazing technology that we have. I mean, like we talk about, in Heal, we're not anti-Western medicine. Western medicine has amazing diagnostic equipment to find out what's going on. If there's an acute illness happening, like thank God for surgical technologies and all the research that we've been able to do. But in this sustainable chronic illness issue, it completely fails at getting to the root cause. And because, again, it's not in alignment with how nature designed the human body, and is completely disconnecting us from our planet, which is, it's the symbiotic existence. And so, I just love the work that you're doing. I love, if we can, like you said, activate this mycelial network of humans, because we have such tremendous, and we're only using, a certain small percentage of our brain. We're only aware of a certain small percentage of the power of fungi. I mean, the fact that there's fungi that can eat up an oil spill, you talk about the indigenous people using fire as a regenerative tool. So we need to now, we've been kind of swept down this river of greed and industry at the expense of health and indigenous and BIPOC people and our planet, And so it's like, I feel like we're at this crucial time where we need to use our brain power, heart-led, connected to Mother Nature, by the work you're doing and storytelling, so that we start to make decisions that are not greed or fear driven, and more heart and community driven. And you talk about like bringing back the food systems to the local from this global system where we made food a commodity, and all of that. So it's just so overwhelming for me to think about what are hearing, and I don't mean to vilify anybody, but just, there's a very wealthy man in the world that just bought up like however many hundreds of thousands of acres of farmland in this country. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not looking at, title statements, but if people are talking about that, that's like terrifying, So it feels overwhelming to me. Bring us back to hope of some of the great things that are happening in regenerative farming and soil and fungi, and how the individual in different ways, whether you're an investor, whether you're, a social activist and can go to Capitol Hill, or if you are just a person who starts to compost at home. Give us some hope here.
Okay. That's a big task,
yeah.
Because things can get really depressing if that's the lens through which you're looking at the world. I think the hope is that more and more of us are waking up, and I think it's so fascinating that your pathway into this world has been through personal healing and healing our personal health. And me, like myself included, a lot of us have come to this path because we've faced some kind of chronic illness, whether it's physical or even spiritual, like the rates of depression and anxiety are through the roof. And I truly believe that it's because everything has a spiritual cause. And the fact that we remember in our cellular DNA a time before we were colonized, before we were extractors and living so degenerately, we do remember a time when we were living in harmony with the natural world and giving back more than we took. That's somewhere back there in our ancestral DNA of our 300,000-year human history. And so something doesn't feel right when we're in this world and we have to buy even if it's organic food, but it comes in a plastic package that we then have to throw in the trash that we know is not going to get recycled, but we lie to ourselves. And there's hope, like, well, I've spent all this money on this organic broccoli, but that like glyphosate doesn't care, it's everywhere, and so everything, I think in the Western world, we're starting to wake up because we're becoming sick, whether physically or spiritually. And so we're starting to realize like these systems are not designed for us to be healthy, for us to be flourishing, for us to be in community. They're designed to keep us sick, to keep us consuming, to divide us. And more of us are waking up and joining this revolution and saying like, if it's like, why are we accepting this as a status quo? Like, if it's broken, let's fix it. And so there's some really exciting orgs doing amazing things. I'll quickly touch on the work of Kiss the Ground because in terms of policy and policy change, which is really important, they're doing some amazing things with this 2023 Farm Bill. So please go and sign whatever petition you can in order to help them get this passed next year. It's enshrining regenerative agriculture in law, in legislation. It is going to make it much easier for traditional farmers to transition to regenerative agriculture. I'm pretty sure it's going to there's going to be a revision of where the subsidies go, because a lot of times people say it's expensive to transition, and it is, but only because they're making the bad practices so cheap and subsidizing the industrial agricultural ways of growing food. Imagine if we flip those around. So I want to thank Kiss the Ground for that. On a personal level, everyone, the one single act of regeneration that everyone can do today is composting. I'm so passionate about it. It's like my friend Josh Witten, who started this amazing app called makesoil.org. It's also an app. He says composting is a regenerative gateway drug.
Yes, I love it.
Because once you start doing that, because that's how I first started, it didn't make sense to me. It was hurting my heart. I'd grown up watching when we had a garden growing up, I knew that we would compost, and I had some memory of using worms and stuff. But then we moved to an apartment, and out of convenience, I saw my mom throw food scraps in the trash. And then I came here and noticed that everyone was doing that. So, sometimes you just don't question. You're like, oh, I guess they must have some way of figuring this out down the line, something that I can't see. But I'm here to tell you, no, when you put your food scraps in the trash, it goes to landfill and creates methane. And that is the most harmful greenhouse gas. So it's the easiest thing to do to just not put it in the trash. So if you want to start composting, there are some really great resources online to help you get started, including on makesoil.org. But if you feel like you just don't have the time and space to do that yourself, the brilliance of Make Soil is that you can sign up to a soil site near you, and that person has agreed to take, and they get to choose how many people and set all the they get to set all their parameters, like what they will receive in terms of composting, when they can come, how many people can come. But the wonderful thing is he's democratizing and outsourcing composting, so we don't have to. And this is no disrespect to cities like New York and San Francisco that have big trucks going around and collecting people's compost. I think that is a good start, but I mean, at the end of the day, these trucks are still powered by fossil fuels, and it's going to some big composting plant. It's so much easier to just outsource it and do it ourselves, or outsource it to the communities rather, instead of outsourcing it to some big company. Yeah. And you get to build up relationships with the people who have the soil sites, and I've made a lot of friends building soil sites around the world. And if you go on the map, it keeps growing. And that's the goal. He's like, how do we get millions of people involved in the act of regeneration? Understanding that many of them won't have access to their own farmland because people like he who shall not be named are buying up all the farmland. And there's incredible injustice in terms of who gets access to land. Yeah. Okay, composting is the easiest way for everybody to start. So that's like a little bit of hope for the personal, and then maybe down the line I'll talk about what the Fungi Foundation are doing, because that's really hopeful too.
Yes. And the composting thing, it's so great to have that subtle shift in why you're doing it, because I've asked people that kind of work in my homes, let's compost, let's figure it out. And for whatever the reason, I don't stay on it, and the plan falls apart. And I'm like, but we have a garden, we can actually use it. So it might seem overwhelming to people, but just to do your part to not create methane or add to the landfills. Mm-hmm. And then it's a huge swing, because not only are you reducing your negative impact, now you're actually all it takes is making soil, which, as you said, if you're contributing to nutrifying and regenerating the soil systems of our world, if we can just do that to 1% of the available, what did you call it,
if we just increase all the soil organic matter if we increase the soil organic matter on all arable, farmable land in the world by less than 1%, that's when we can reduce greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide in the atmosphere to pre-industrial levels.
So look, like like 30 years ago, we adopted this idea of recycling, and now we have 2 bins, and we have city programs, and who knows how effective they are down the line. I'm hoping that they actually do the work. But now we've got to introduce this third aspect of composting, and if we can get people to just adopt it as easy, as it's just something you do. You separate your organic matter, you separate your recyclables, and you have your landfill matter. Like, that just seems like the trifecta of what an individual can do on a daily basis. And if you don't have a garden, or if you don't have a local farm you want to drive through, or to a farmer's market where you can hand over your soil, like, use your friend's app, which is makesoil.org. I mean, I love that.
And I love that he calls it making soil. Josh doesn't call it composting. Yeah. And he's like, we needed a rebrand because composting was like dirty and boring, and like it was
you just think of like rotten bananas or something.
And people go ew. But when you tell people actually what we're doing is making soil, now you get people excited. And I think that I also feel you on the follow through. I travel a lot, and so when I come back my compost bin, it feels like I've just gone to step 1 again.
Right.
I'm like, but when you do finally, it does take some tending to, but once you do finally get to harvest your own soil and you look at it and you're like, I made that with my eggshells and my banana peels and my avocado pits, and like, wow, now you're doing what the indigenous people of the Amazon did to make the terra preta.
Yeah.
The 2 ingredients were composting and biochar, which is a whole nother podcast interview, but
yeah,
it's an exciting indigenous technology too. It's a way of using fire in a regenerative way. But yeah, this is how they built the Amazon. So,
and
like, what excuse we have?
10 million people sustainably for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And we are struggling with desertification, starvation in our own, even town of Los Angeles. And just so, yeah, there's lots of work to be done.
One more little note, just because when I say this, people really wake up to just the logic behind why I push indigenous food systems. So there are some indigenous food systems. There are some that are as old as 10,000 years continuously in use in Australia. There's a book called Dark Emu that talks about this, but some aquaponic systems used by indigenous Australians there. But in the Americas, like for example, the Milpa forest system in Mesoamerica, it is a continuously used indigenous built food system that has lasted 8,000 years. By contrast, modern food systems collapse after 400. Okay, this is why it's just logical that we look to them and say, whoops, we made a little mistake. We didn't listen to you guys when we got here. We were very rude guests when we came to these lands.
Yeah.
Would you please accept our apology and now show us the way forward? Here's our support.
I love that. How do you see us getting the guys, I say guys generally, the people at the top of these corporations who are just concerned about the bottom line and don't have the spiritual intelligence or education to understand how profoundly important it is to reconnect with Mother Nature?
I'm the wrong person to ask about that because I have very little hope for the guys at the top. I'm just like, I really think it's going to have to be a real grassroots movement from the mycelial underground. But it is going to have to involve a lot of land reform because we need land to practice these, regenerative systems. And don't even get me started on this topic. I mean, just to plant the seed, if anyone else wants to go do some research into how badly we need land reform in this country, the 4 biggest landowners in America are white men. And collectively, they own more land than every African American person in this country. But, okay, end on the hope, there is an exciting movement. It's called the Land Back Movement, where counties, states, places all around America are acknowledging that it is really important for Indigenous people to be rematriated onto their lands, also so that they can steward these and bring back some of these systems and teach us. The one really exciting project to look into is the Sogorea Land Trust in the Bay Area. They've given land back, I think it's to the Ohlone tribe, and it's pretty much run by this council of women, and they allow other people to come on and learn, but like this is a tribe being rematriated on their lands. I think it's just happened here in Los Angeles, which are Tongva lands. I'm hoping to see it happen up in Ojai, where I live, on Chumash lands. And we just need to start getting this into our vernacular again. Like, we are very recent and very rude guests, and it's time for us to first acknowledge the Indigenous lands you were on. And you can do that by looking up nativeland.net, and then do some research. Like, are there any groups actively working to revive these systems that we so desperately need? Maybe I can donate, maybe I can volunteer. But for me, I think that is more hopeful, that the revolution comes from us on the ground than waiting for these CEOs who make big bucks at the expense of our health and our soil health, and are going to be really hard to budge unless it's for greenwashing.
Mm-hmm. I know. And I think, you mentioned this before, and we all see it. A lot of people villainize, there's an evil force at play, and maybe there is, but I tend to think like there's just more an ignorant force at play, and they've convinced themselves that they're helping in some twisted way. It's like it's so backwards. But anyways, well,
the line between good and evil runs through every man. Like, I also don't believe in an evil force, but I believe that I think individuals who are profiting from the climate crisis and from the destruction of our soils and the destruction of the last pristine wildernesses, I think they must be in deep spiritual crises themselves. I don't think there's a way they can go to bed believing their own lies. And so I pray for their spiritual awakening and renewal. I think that's the only way.
And lobbying. I feel like there has to be like
spiritual awakening and lobbying.
And lobbying changes. Like, there's just so much, they've just our government, there's got to be a restructuring of, if someone's in power too long, they all of a sudden, what started out as altruism became jaded and self-interest, and they get their pockets lined by these lobbyists for different industries, and then they're making laws based on their own personal interests. And it's like, but that to me is like the term limits and lobbying has to be looked at.
Okay, yes, and because I always like to give, there's an Indigenous answer to that. So
Great.
I think these rules and laws, especially around terms and term limits and lobbying, are really rooted in Eurocentric values, which are like profit above all else, out of sight, out of mind. If it's not in my backyard, I don't care. And Indigenous value to counter that would be the 7th generation principle. Which is that you don't make a decision unless you have considered how it will affect the 7 generations coming before you. Now, consider that kind of long-term thinking and planning compared to a 4-year term of a typical presidency party. They're only pitching things that they think are going to benefit people in the space of 4 years because they want to get reelected. Yeah. So that also has to be looked at. Yes. Because we're enshrining short-sightedness in our political systems. So I also believe power can really corrupt. And so yes, we need to talk about term limits, but we also need to talk about just how we're planning for our future. It's so, the amount of fossil fuels that have been already extracted, that are already out of the ground, okay? We can only burn 1/5 of that if we are going to stay below 2 degrees of warming, not even 1.5, 2 degrees, which is like worst case scenario. Yeah. So why are we still drilling? Yeah. This is such an example of short-sightedness.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
So that's why we need to infuse not only our technologies, but our values. Do unto other downstream as you would have them do unto you. Just because it's out of sight, it is very much not out of mind.
7 generations.
7 generations.
And they say when you do healing, you can heal back and forward 7 generations because you are changing your energetic makeup and DNA and chemistry and everything is connected,
exactly.
Quantum physically.
And the agroforestry system that I was describing, that is how the Amazon was built. An agroforestry system sometimes takes up to 30 years for completion. Like you start with like nothing, you clear the ground with some controlled burning, and then you start planting in succession every year a mixture of climax trees and annuals and perennials, and you create it's this whole beautiful system of like successional planting until in 30 years you've created a forest that will last thousands of years. That's the kind of like deep time thinking we need to go back to, rather than just, oh, what's the quickest buck I can make, you know?
Yeah. And that's, I'm looking at what this pandemic did, and, you know, this divisiveness that we poured gasoline, you know, for lack of a better metaphor, on, and blew up this polarization. But it's now for a certain population, they're going, whoa, we need to take our power back, go back to a local community situation, grow our own food. So people are buying up land, and we need this this mycelial network of earth savers to start that process of creating that forest, creating that biodiversity now.
Yes.
And commit to it for the next, you know, the rest of their life.
And it's not
so
like
we can leave that gift for the future generations.
Exactly. And it's not like this is some impossible task. The Indigenous people have given us proof that it is possible within the realm of human history and experience. So yeah, I think I get excited about that too.
Tell me about the Shambhala warriors, because when I listened to a podcast that you talked about, I got like full body chills, and I'm like, I think I'm going to be a Shambhala warrior.
Okay, you are a Shambhala warrior, and I know that there are many Shambhala warriors listening here. So the Shambhala warrior prophecy is an ancient Tibetan Buddhist prophecy that Joanna Macy speaks about, and I encourage everybody to listen to her telling of it. You can look it up on YouTube. So I'm going to give a little paraphrased version, but it basically goes like this. There comes a time in human history, or there will come a time in human history, this is how the prophecy goes, where the fate of humanity and the whole world hangs on by just the frailest of threads.
It seems like it's kind of near.
I feel like we're in these times too.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And at this time, it's going to feel very hopeless, because there are going to be some very powerful people and dark forces and powers in the world that accumulating these weapons of mass destruction, and it's just getting darker and darker. At this time, when it feels like all hope is lost, the Shambhala warrior enters into the picture. Now, this is not a warrior that you're going to recognize because of they have like a shield or a sword or a certain insignia on their military uniform. These warriors are more incognito than that. And how they will how they approach this situation is by entering into the halls of power where these decisions are being made, and they will dismantle these weapons of mass destruction, because they know that these weapons were made with the human mind. They are man-made, therefore they can be unmade with the human mind. It's not some supernatural force that we're fighting against. If we did it, we can undo it. And so these are like undercover warriors going into places where all the decisions are being made, and they're influencing and they're unraveling and dismantling and building new systems. And they have two weapons. The first is the weapon of compassion. And the second weapon is the weapon of the understanding of the interconnectedness of all living beings. So the compassion is the heart medicine, and this understanding of interconnectivity is like the mind, helping you balance out that compassion, because if you just live in the compassion, you can get really burnt out. It's very heavy stuff that we're living through. And so the other part reminds you that everything is interconnected. We all have a role to play, no matter how small, and just to see the bigger picture, and that we're not alone. And so when I heard this, I was like, whoa, this so deeply resonates with me, and how I just feel called to show up in the world, A, but B, I didn't understand the weapons of mass destruction part until about a year ago. I thought like, oh, I'm going to go in there and like, yeah, the weapons of mass destruction, so like nuclear arms, etc. It wasn't until a year ago that my mother told me that my grandmother who's a rural farmer in Peru, they were sold DDT as a form of delicing their animals, and were also told that they could use it on their children when their children got lice, came home from school with lice, that they could rub it on their heads. And 2 of my aunties died from cancer, and I just put the dots together. And that's when I realized, oh, those are the weapons of mass destruction that I'm being called to dismantle. The agrochemical industry.
Oh my
that
gosh.
Those, I mean, we don't think about those as weapons of mass destruction, but they've been unleashed upon us. And so, yeah, that's why I do this work with the soil and the lobbying and the advocacy and the fungi, because at the end of the day, it's all part of this like fight against this industrial chemical complex that controls what we eat, what we put on our bodies, and it's personal now.
And we're seeing this. I mean, in the toxic chemical spills that are randomly and weirdly happening all over this country. And, you know, the byproduct of the train derailment and this like phosgene or something, whatever it was called, it was literally like a weapon, chemical weapon that they used in World War II. And we also found like Agent Orange, which kind of became chemo, right? Like the chemical destruction we are inflicting on ourselves is the biggest weapon of mass destruction. And it's why cancer is, I mean, I can't go, when I started making Heal, however many years ago, 6, 7, 8 years ago, like 5, when was it? You know, I literally was like a week, you know, every week goes by or every month goes by that someone I know, I hear someone getting cancer. Now it's like the amount of health issues that I'm seeing is just devastating. And it's just, so all of that to say, I had the prophecy of the Shambhala warrior and looking at you and the work you're doing. Literally, besides the fact that my favorite jeweler is Shambhala, I have like 4 different Shambhala bracelets. And I've been wearing them for like 10 years. So and I just was drawn to this company. They make beautiful jewelry. But this is just like, that's the hopeful, you know, like the people that have been personally affected, the work you're doing about bringing these ancient indigenous technologies and wisdom, and you know, they are cultures that are heart driven and they have that combination of connectivity and compassion, you know, and that's what we need to reintroduce into this modern society that is just literally a toxic train derailed.
Well, thankfully we have the fungi to help us heal all this toxic waste. I mean, this is part of why I feel so drawn to the work of the foundation, because we've released all these toxins out into, we've unleashed them onto our populations, our waters. I mean, they're everywhere now. And so my only hope is that fungi be having such a voracious and wide appetite. They'll eat up plastic, like you said, they'll eat up oil spills, even nuclear waste. You know, I think that's the future, is that we have to start working with these fungi now and really putting serious money into the research behind mycoremediation. That's our only hope of like decomposing and moving through this like toxic era that I hope our future the generations that come after us will look back at us and like, you know, like remember us with disgust, like what a toxic what a toxic time in human history. Thank God the fungi came in after that to clean that all up and to teach us never to do that again. But I would really love to just end on this piece around the work of the Fungi Foundation, because I really appreciate the fact that you've put so much emphasis on this interview on like what we can do back home. And I feel like this supporting the foundation is something that is going to leave a legacy for future generations, because they are the only, when they started, they were the only NGO dedicated to mushroom fungi conservation in the world. Can you imagine the plants and the animals just having one NGO looking out for all the species?
And fungi is a massive kingdom that's even bigger than
right?
And we only know the powers and the incredible powers and intelligence of 5 to 10%.
Exactly. Now imagine that there's just one NGO looking out for the preservation of biodiversity of plants or animals, and imagine that their budget is under $500,000 a year. I mean, that is shameful. And I say this because I kind of want people to know how important it is that we show up in that way. I'm going to quickly touch on some of the work that they're doing that's amazing. So we can't even, there's not even enough data to show how many fungi species are going extinct, because it is such a researched part of science. So they're putting a lot of work into collecting that data, and then from that data they can identify the specific species that are at risk, and they have successfully put one of these species on the red list. This is exciting because once you get on the UN's red list, it means you can protect that whole habitat from extractive industries, from construction, from any kind of destruction or deforestation. And one of the biggest threats that fungi are facing is the fact that their habitats are under threat from logging, etc., because their habitats are old growth forests. Okay, so with this precedent-setting move of protecting this fungi, putting it on the red list, now we can, this is just setting the domino chain, starting that domino effect of like finding other species and being able to go around the whole world to old growth forests all around the world and wherever we find fungi habitats and say, sorry, you can't come in here, you can't cut down these trees because we've got an endangered fungi here and we don't want to lose that to humanity. And so there's that part, there's the conservation part. Juliana has also managed to get the rights of fungi enshrined in law in Chile, which is the first country in the world to recognize flora, fauna, and fungi in the environmental protection laws. We're hoping that also starts a domino effect around the world. Next, we're creating a fungal-based curriculum so that it's accessible to anybody for free all around the world in partnership with Louis Schwartzberg and Fantastic Fungi. But this is because we're going to need citizen scientists to be going out there and to be documenting and cataloging. And so it's not right that children in school don't learn about fungi next to plants and animals. So we're hoping to change that. And then lastly, we have the expedition piece where we go out to discover new species of fungi, which Juliana discovers every time she goes out there. And that goes back to a fungarium where they have currently preserved, I think, over 2,000 species. And this is going to be like the Noah's Ark. If things get really bad and we start losing these habitats and losing all these species at faster rates, this fungarium could be our only hope to save these species for future generations. So talk about doing the 7-generation work. There could be some moment in the future where all of our energy needs are provided for by fungi.
Totally.
And somebody's going to say, thank God those people donated to the Fungi Foundation.
Right.
And became monthly donors in order to support this work, because that fungi could have been lost forever. We were at the brink of losing it, except this amazing org came in and saved it for future generations, and now we've created some new energy source out of it. And that's not far from the truth, because Otzi, the Iceman mummy, was when he was he's 10,000 years old. Okay, so he was de-thawed in Switzerland, and he had a little medicine pouch on him, very stylish, and he had 2 mushrooms in his pouch. One of them was to treat parasites, and when they did his autopsy, they found he did have intestinal worms. So he was savvy. He was on a detox.
Yeah.
And he was collecting this medicine to detox. And he had this other mushroom that was used for kindling. So you didn't have to imagine in the ancient world when you built your own fires, to not have to start again and to be able to take embers from one fire on this fungi kindling to be able to start your next. That would have been miraculous. And so if there's a fungi that can be used for kindling and for I'm convinced there's got to be one that can replace fossil fuels.
Totally, absolutely.
So this is why the work is so important, because of what we don't know. And if anyone has felt sporulated by this chat, you can go onto every.org and sign up to give $5, $10, $20 a month to the org. And a big chunk of our budget comes from the mycelium revolution of just people out there who feel called to support. So you can donate at every.org. That's a way to be a monthly donor or make a one-time donation at the Fungi Foundation, all tax deductible.
Yes. It sounds like an unlikely cause to get behind because we are so uninformed. And that's why I love the work that you're doing. I love the passion that you have behind it. And it resonates so much with me as a fellow Shambhala warrior, self-proclaimed, because I've always said the intelligence of nature is far beyond. I mean, it's whether you're religious or the flowers are toiling, and nature, we've evolved for billions of years, far before humans were ever here. But now we have this species, us humans, who can take what nature teaches us and then go one level higher, where we can create say the word in
Teha preta.
Teha preta, to create this like Amazon jungle and rich ecosystem and biodiversity. So we're at this point where we've learned so much from our mistakes, yet there's so much hope that we can do on an individual level. And if it, like Nat said, if you're sporulated by this talk, watch Fantastic Fungi if you haven't, or if you have, watch it again. The Kiss the Ground, Seed, I think.
Seed's a brilliant movie.
Seed, and these three just will it'll just call that fire within you that we need to take action now. Yeah. We need to start creating our own rich Amazon and forest, which starts now and is going to last the next 30 years, and give this gift to our future generations. Because if we are complacent, if we are apathetic, we are a major part of the problem. So find what you're passionate about, as we're all going to get our corner of this movement and contribute. If you're an activist, get involved in policy, and if you're an investor, invest in these technologies or farms, and donate to things like the Farmer's Footprint or the Fungi Foundation. And so thank you so much, because you've taught me so much. And you humbly said, I love that you think I'm an expert. I mean, your knowledge is vast, and I just really appreciate you sharing it here today.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for listening, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Heal podcast. Be sure to tune in for more empowering wisdom and inspiring healing stories. Oh, and make sure you hit the follow button on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, so you don't miss that one episode that holds the answer you've been searching for. And if you feel inspired, we would love you to rate and review us so that we have the opportunity to reach more people. And of course, you can follow us on Instagram for some behind-the-scenes fun and more inspiration at @HealDocumentary and @KellyGorris. Thank you so much, and be well.